This commission acts in review and recommending capacity for comprehensive plan amendments, text amendments to the Charleston County Zoning and Land Development Regulations Ordinance, rezonings, and plan developments. Commission has decision-making authority on road name change requests, public project reviews, appeals of administrative decisions, and final plats and subdivision matters, as well as other matters pursuant to Chapter 29, Title 6, Section 6-29-340 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina as amended. If you wish to speak at today's meeting, please fill out the sign-in sheet by the door. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm Cindy Floyd, Chair. To my right is Luke Morris, Pete Pilatos, Marlena Davis, and Adam McConnell. To my left is David Kent, Warwick Jones, Logan Davis, and our newest commissioner, Mr. Kent Prowse. Prowse? Okay. Now retired, Mr. Prowse has 33 years of professional planning experience with the town of Mount Pleasant and 19 years professional planning experience as a part-time basis with the town of Sullivan's Island. He's a member of St. Michael's Anglican Church, a former member of the South Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association, and a former member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Official welcome, Mr. Prowse. Okay, and then there's Commission Attorney Mark Bell and Joel Evans are sitting on the dais facing us, along with Andrea Milichek, Emily Wynn, Marche Miller, Savannah Murray, Monica Eustace, and Tamara Avery. Is that everybody?
And I have a few more staff members here.
Okay.
Sally Brooks, who you all might know. Matthew Husband is here with subdivision. Also Sharon Lynn is here, and Tamara, well, you said Tamara. So. Oh, and Monica Eustace. Yeah.
I think I said her.
Okay.
She's on the list.
She's on the list.
Okay. I'd like to remind you that in order to get a good recording of the meeting for the minutes, please speak loudly and clearly into your microphones, and please do not talk over one another. Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the November 14th meeting. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Would you please call the roll? Oh, any discussion?
Commissioner Logan Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Marlena Davis.
Aye.
Chair Floyd.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Kent.
Absent.
Commissioner McConnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Morris.
Aye.
Vice Chair Pilatos.
Aye.
And Commissioner Prowse. Prowse.
I too did
Let's
not
see.
attend the meeting, so.
Gotcha. The ayes have it.
So, we didn't have any items on the agenda as far as the normal business that we see, but since we were embarking on the review of the comprehensive plan for this year, which we want to have completed by the end of the year, the staff put together a presentation to go over the department a little bit and also the comprehensive plan itself and how that is set up and operates under state law, and a little bit of history about the comprehensive plan for Charleston County as well. We're lucky because as far as staff member wise, Sharon, besides Sharon behind me, me and Andrea have been here with the county for basically since the beginning of the comprehensive plan in '99. So we wanted to give you a little bit of history about how the plan got to where it is. But before that, just a little bit about the department as well. So we'll get started.
Please.
So this chart up here that I'm showing you, I don't know if all the planning commissioners have seen this before. This is a chart of the planning department itself. So we are under Deputy County Administrator Walt Smalls as you probably know, we have the administrator, and then the administrator has deputy county administrators under him. That's Bill Tootin. And we are under Walt Smalls. He has several departments under him. But this is the organizational chart for the planning department. So as you can see, there's the director and the deputy director's position, which you know those two very well, I'm sure. The tree off to the left has Emily Wynn, Emily Piggott, Monica Eustace, Savannah Murray, and Marche Miller. That is more of the Planning Commission and Comprehensive Plan and Zeldar amendments, the things that you all see. That's what they mostly work on. The tree over to the right on that chart is sort of what I call the day-to-day functions of the planning department. That includes subdivision, code enforcement, zoning administration, and Board of Zoning Appeals. So Jenny Working is in charge of the BZA. Sally Brooks is our zoning administrator. So she's in charge of the front counter, like I say, the day-to-day operations, and also our site plan review process. Lisa McCrae is our code supervisor. So we have several code enforcement officers that enforce the zoning ordinance. And Tamara Avery is in charge of subdivision, and she basically administers the subdivision part of our ordinance. We have 28 FTEs in the department. Jurisdiction, some of the department functions, we only have jurisdiction in the unincorporated areas of the county. So I just want to, I'm sure you all know that, but we just want to be sure that we say that. The draft and process changes to the county's planning and zoning policy documents and regulations, including the comprehensive plan and the zoning and land development regulations ordinance. So you all have seen some of the ZLDR amendments. We just went through that exercise. We went through about a 3-year period. I don't know that all of you, well, I will say, I know that all of you have not been through the comprehensive plan process. Some of you have and some of you haven't. If you've been here for more than 5 years, then you will know. But it is required by state law that it be reviewed every 5 years and updated every 5 years, kind of alternating the 5-year cycle. And we're in the review process now. We process applications for rezonings, plan developments, and BZA review for variances, special exceptions, and appeals of administrative decisions. And a new commission that we have that we didn't have 4 years ago, it's only 3 years old, is our Historic Preservation Commission. And they review applications for property to be designated as historic or for districts that are designated as historic. And also development near historic properties and districts. So we have a 300-foot radius around those properties or those districts that also has to go through a review process according to that Historic Preservation Commission ordinance. And of course, at staff level, we do subdivisions of properties and site plan review. Other functions we do, code enforcement, zoning and environmental management. Those are the types of things that we do in code enforcement. Community planning, some of the plans that you all have seen, Parker's Ferry, Solid Gree, Maybank Highway overlay, and Main Road. And we are currently working with the town of Mount Pleasant to update our currently existing Mount Pleasant overlay zoning district. Also special projects like historic preservation grants, affordable housing task force. We occasionally get assigned by county council to participate on other projects that they deem important for the county. Another big thing we do is we, as a staff, as a whole, we whenever there is an activation of the EOC, we are the planning section in the Emergency Operations Center up in North Charleston on Palmetto Commerce Parkway. So whenever there's an activation, it's typically for a hurricane for us, The EOC, they get activated regularly just with the EPD staff for other things. But when there is a potential long-term event that may happen, we will get activated, and my whole staff will take place in alternating shifts in the EOC, and we've been up there for 3, 4, 5, 6 days at a time sometimes.
And what sort of tasks do you work on during emergencies?
So there's a whole process within an EOC that to be tracked so that we can get reimbursement from the federal government when there is an event that happens to impact properties. And how the actual EOC operates is under what they call an IAP, Incident Action Plan, right, thank you. Incident Action Plan, we're in charge of that. We're in charge of documenting everything that occurs in the EOC as far as requests for resources and for how many people actually come to the EOC. Because if an event does occur, then it puts the county in a position to have the proper documents to get reimbursed, even for personnel. And it could be even for the time that we're up there. But if it's a very impactful event, it could be significant reimbursements to help rebuild things.
And this is reimbursements from FEMA?
Yes, from the federal government and from the state.
Okay.
Yeah. So about the comprehensive plan, the state law under the Local Government Comprehensive Planning Act, they set up how jurisdictions can operate. If you want to have a zoning and land development regulations ordinance, you have to have a comprehensive plan. In 1994, the comprehensive plans are a little bit new to South Carolina, relatively. In 1994, the state passed this act that basically said, hey, all jurisdictions, if you want to have a zoning ordinance, you now have to have a comprehensive plan. We will give you 5 years to get that plan in place. So they passed the law in 94, and by 99, every jurisdiction, whether it was a city or a county, had to have a comprehensive plan to keep that ordinance, to make it legal. Other boards and commissions, we talked about this a little bit in a couple other presentations, but the way that the hierarchy works with us is that we have county council, 9 members that are elected. They're the final decision makers on the comprehensive plan, the ZLDR, rezonings, plan developments, acceptance of public dedications, and designation of historic properties. So the planning commission's role on the 3 boards that the planning department staffs is the review and recommend the comp plan, ZLDR, rezonings and plan developments. And then they have final decision making on subdivision plats and appeals and public project review and street names. All right. The Board of Zoning Appeals, that's also 9 members that are appointed. They are a final decision-making body. They're not a recommendation body. So any decision that they make on special exceptions or variances or appeals of administrative decisions, the next step in the process, in the due process, is circuit court. All right. Historic Preservation Commission, there are 9 members appointed by county council. They are both a review and a recommending body for designations of historic properties, but they're also a final decision maker in certificates of historic appropriateness. So to become a historic property or district, they recommend to county council, and county council makes that final decision. But they have the final decision making on historic appropriateness, and that's the term that we use for just being approved for something that's built on the historic property, all right, or developed. Responsibilities, again, comp plan reviews and updates, zoning and land development regulations, and zoning map amendments for planning commission, including PDs. Also, final decision-making on subdivision plats and appeals and public project and street names. And just so you'll know who the subdivision staff is, I know you know Tamara, who's in charge of subdivision. But Matthew and Sharon, do you want to stand up and just say, this is the face of the other people that have to do with the subdivision. So this is the staff that is implementing the subdivision regulations that basically fall under planning commission. All right. Am I doing this too? All right. So let's talk about the comp plan, since that's what we're going to be doing for this year. What that you'll see. So what we plan is every month to update you on where staff is on the comp plan. We sent out a survey earlier a few months ago, and we got almost 300 responses. And next month you'll be seeing the results of that survey. So
Is that a typical number of responses?
yeah, a few hundred. When you get a few hundred, that's not too bad, really. That's not by the way, this is just the beginning. So we actually will be going out, and we'll get into the schedule a little bit later, but we'll be going out into the community as well, and there'll be other opportunities. Like I said, every month we'll have something to take to the planning commission of where we are in the process. That will also that will be advertised and on the agenda, and that will give opportunity for the public to actually show up at the meetings as well. So we'll be going out into the communities, and we will be taking public comment at the planning commission meetings. So a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is. It's an expression of a community's vision for its future, and it serves as a guide. And that is a little bit different than what we usually see. I know that the planning commission is used to seeing zoning and land development regulations, ordinances, which those are not guides. Those are rules and laws that have, definitive measurements and language in there that says the shalls, and all. However, it is a law. It is an ordinance. So the comprehensive plan as a whole is an ordinance because it gets adopted by county council. But the language in the plan is a vision and it is a guide. As I went over, the authority is granted by state law, and reviews are required every 5 years and updates every 10. So what's in a comp plan? It does require at least 10 elements. Those are the population, economic development, natural resources, cultural resources, community facilities, housing, transportation, land use, priority investment, and resilience. And Charleston County has added an 11th element, the energy element. Now the resilience element is actually newer as well. That is something that came out about just in the past, was that like 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. The state added that as a requirement. It used to be 9 elements, and it's 10 now. And the resilience is the 10th one. Each element must include, by state law, an inventory of existing conditions, a statement of needs and goals, and implementation strategies with timeframes. All right. And who develops the comp plan? Public involvement is a big key. It is essential to engage the community, and there should be broad-based citizen participation for development of any comp plan element. The Planning Commission develops the comp plan and the amendments and makes recommendations for adoption by County Council. These pictures that you see up here are ones from the previous update review that we had. And when we go out into the public and do this, we have little exercises, but mostly we're there to get input from the community. As far as the comp plan and amendment process, the Planning Commission reviews the plan and each proposed amendment and adopts a resolution by a majority of the entire membership, recommending that the county council approve, disapprove, or approve with conditions any plan or amendment. Before adoption, county council must hold a public hearing and give the public a minimum of 30 days public notice of the hearing. So that's a little bit different than some of the other things that we have. It's not quite 30 days on others. County council must adopt the plan and amendment by ordinance. As far as the approval criteria of a comprehensive plan, plans may be approved by county council only if they determine that the proposed amendment is consistent with the overall purpose and intent of the comp plan and that any one of the following criteria are met. There was a significant error in the original comp plan adoption. In adopting the comp plan, the county council failed to take into account facts, projections, or trends that were reasonably foreseeable to exist in the future. Events and trends or facts after the adoption of the comp plan have changed the county council's original findings made upon plan adoption. The proposed comprehensive plan amendment is requested pursuant and complies with Article 3.17 of the ZELDAR. And the proposed comp plan amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan, future land use recommendations, or adjacent municipalities that have adopted extraterritorial jurisdiction to the subject parcel. We don't have that. There are no jurisdictions that have adopted extraterritorial jurisdiction in Charleston County, so that one wouldn't apply. But I just did want to say that, as I said earlier, I was around I was hired in October of '99, basically right when the comprehensive plan was first adopted by Charleston County. And the document at that time was about 3 inches thick. And Cindy's the one that would know for sure. You were around then, and I think you might have actually been
I was on county council.
You were on county council then, that's right. And Cindy, I think, will attest to how kind of painful it was to get that first comp plan adopted. It was, and I was a brand new employee of just observing, and I thought, what have I got myself into? But it was interesting to watch, and I don't think that it's a stretch to say that just about every single thing in that comprehensive plan was some form of concession, and everyone wanted to have what was important to them in the plan, and that's what we wound up with. About 8 years later, maybe. When was this version of it? We did the big overhaul.
That was the first 10-year review.
That was the first 10-year review. So, yeah, we started 8 years later and was adopted about 2 years later. Yeah. So this is the plan that took the 3-inch document down to this half-inch document, which I think still captured the painful 3-inch document, the high-level stuff, the important things, and it kept it. But we reflected a lot of it. The 3-inch document was very wordy. It was reams of paper of words describing things. We did a lot of graphics in this one that captured a lot of the same things. And then we took down the goals and objectives. We pared that down, and we had, for those of you all who were here, remember, we had a really good consultant team that helped us with it, and they helped us for 2 years. And they kept us on track on because this consultant team helps jurisdictions across the country write their comprehensive plans, because all states, I don't know of a state that doesn't have a comprehensive planning act. So that's the way they made their living. So they've seen it all. And they helped us with the wording of our goals and objectives and the things that are required. They did research in the South Carolina state law about the things that are required, that are unique to South Carolina, and helped us get through that sort of maze of things. So I think since then, this plan has been very good. We are in a review period, so we're hoping that we're not looking at a complete overhaul, but it is, it's not just required by state law, but we do want to welcome any suggestions for changes and walk it through the process. But these are the rules and regulations to do that. So how is the plan implemented? The most common method of a plan implementation is through zoning and land development regulations, which of course, is a direct conduit from, it's a natural fit for us. We're the staff for Planning Commission who's in charge of the comp plan and the ordinance. But there are also other ways. The comprehensive plan is not just a Charleston County Planning and Zoning Department plan. It's the plan for the entire county, for other departments. So it can be implemented through transportation projects and plans, economic development plans, greenbelt, agriculture and open space, interjurisdictional cooperation and agreements, urban growth boundaries, conservation subdivisions, and funding tools, capital improvement programs, adequate public facilities ordinances. And I'm not going to go through this because I just said it earlier, but basically it all starts in '94 through the South Carolina Government Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act, and all of that, if you're interested in it, is in Title VI, Chapter 29 under state law, and it all spells out how a comprehensive plan should exist. Our 99 was our first one after many years of going through the process with the Planning Commission and County Council at the time. And remember, you can imagine in 99, it was the first time, and the first time for something is always the more difficult one. So, and then we have our reviews, and we've had the reviews in 2003 and 13, and the updates in 08 and 2018. But the 08 was a pretty big one for us. That's what brought it to this. Andrew, I'm gonna let you say that. My voice is starting to get dry.
Right. So this is the vision statement. I will go ahead and read it just because I think it's important, and also because the comments we saw come out of the survey were about the vision statement and how it might be outdated at this point and needs some work. So I think we'll spend some time talking about it. But for those of you who haven't read it, here it is. Our vision for the future of Charleston County is tempered by its history. Charleston County is characterized by its natural scenic beauty, active waterways and port, extensive history, truly diverse culture, and vibrant business climate. However, our greatest asset is our people. All of these attributes contribute to its accelerating growth and development. As this growth continues, it is essential that the people embrace a vision for the county which respects the natural environment and traditional lifestyles and allows for responsible growth and quality development with an emphasis on regional cooperation. While striving to enhance our quality of life, a balance must be maintained between fostering growth and development and preserving our natural and cultural resources without compromising traditional values and settlement patterns, and always respecting the rights of the individual, including private property rights. Historically, an agrarian community, expanses of land remain in some form of agricultural use. We should make every effort to support these activities for cultural, economic, and scenic reasons. This is in keeping with the vision of Thomas Hayward Jr., a Charleston signer of the Declaration of Independence, who said, quote, "Agriculture is the parent of commerce, and both together form the great sources from which the wants of individuals are supplied," end quote. Beaches, waterways, natural beauty, and historic resources encourage recreational activities and tourism. These features contribute to the quality of life. Therefore, the county should ensure that they are not lost. The economic base of the county is shifting. As a community, we should encourage diversification and growth. Regionally, major employers are the port, tourism, the medical industry, the government and military, agriculture, and increasingly manufacturing, specifically high-tech manufacturing. As we support these economic activities and quality growth, coordination and cooperation among the various governmental entities must occur, resulting in improved service delivery, high-quality development, and unity. This healthy, vibrant community must look to the past, consider the present, and plan for the future in order to remain a superior place to live, work, and play. So that was written for the 99 plan, and it has not changed at all since then. And kind of remember what was going on then. You know, the Navy base had just closed, and so the county was scrambling a little bit for employment opportunities and those types of things. So it was just kind of a different time. And this is really the first time I think that we've had many comments on the vision statement. I don't remember any of our other public workshops, you know, the input coming out being about the vision itself.
And then we
So-
got a lot of comments, and we'll present that to you. We got a lot of comments from the folks on that. And you can see in the vision statement from the comment I made earlier, and I said concession, but I meant more like a compromise, that the document was, there were the property rights folks and the conservation folks, and that was the plan that came out, and that's the way it always is, right? You can't have it one way, you got to do both. So one of the things that we foresee, and the reason why Andrea read it, and we have a slide just for it, is we fully expect that the vision statement needs to be revisited. It's very old. It's not very old. It's been, as Andrea said, since '99, but a lot of things have changed in Charleston since '99. So, and a lot of the comments that we got is, wow, I've never seen a vision statement so long where it looks like a book. So, and they're right. But that was what was able to get passed in '99 so that we could have a comprehensive plan. So we look forward to working with the Planning Commission and the public and paring that down and hopefully getting it down to one nice, simple, concise paragraph.
Yeah,
That-
the plan was quite controversial when it
Yes,
was first set
yes,
out.
very
But it
controversial.
was interesting because I was on the planning commission 10 years later when we revamped it. And some of the people that were complaining, some of the loudest complainers in the beginning came back at the 10-year one and said, don't change a thing.
Right, right,
So it took a while, but it was accepted.
yes, yeah, yep,
Do you want me to keep going?
yep.
So there are several themes in the comprehensive plan, and these have been in there since '99. They were really more fleshed out and pulled out as the major themes when we redid the plan in 2008. But they're listed here, so I'll go through them. All future plan updates and reviews should stay the course and build on the past successes of the plan, like Cindy was saying. You know, it took a while, but people took to it over the years. Rural preservation is very important. Fiscal responsibility is essential to success for the county. The broad nature of comprehensive planning is important for a successful future. However, there are areas in the county where a more detailed land use study and planning will be necessary. We do have an annual work plan that's included in the comprehensive plan that you all will be reviewing and making recommendations for future projects that are sort of outside the scope of our normal processing of applications. Establishing working relationships and/or formal agreements with other jurisdictions and agencies that contribute to the quality of life. The plan places an emphasis for growth to occur within the urban growth boundary, where the public services and infrastructure that are required exist. And we have a growth management map that's been part of that plan since '99 that we'll go over in just a minute that reinforces that. And then finally, the integration of social, economic, and environmental considerations into all development processes with broad public participation in decision-making is important for achieving resilient and sustainable development in the county. This last one was added probably around 2011 or so when we added the energy element, and it was reinforced when we added the resilience element, which is our most recent element. And then these are the element goals. So as you'll see in each element, there's a statement of needs, and then there's a statement of goals, needs, and strategies. So we'll go through the element goals here because this is something you're going to see. We have had a lot of comments on each of the survey. I'm not sure did anybody take the survey that was sent out? So you saw how it was structured. So it basically said, it had some demographic questions like how old are you, where do you live, that kind of thing. And then we focused in on, here's the vision statement, what do you think about it? Do you like it? If yes, then it was just a yes answer. If no, then you could provide comments. And we went through each of the goals like that and provided links to all of the strategies for each of the elements. So that's the kind of input that you'll get. So I'll go through quickly the goal for each of the elements. The first is the land use element. The goal is to accommodate growth that respects the unique character of the county, promotes economic opportunity, respects private property rights, and is coordinated with the provision of community facilities, but protects cultural and natural resources. The economic development element goal is that Charleston County will be an integral part of a strong, diverse, and growing regional economy, providing economic opportunities for its citizens and fostering fiscal health for county government services and facilities. The next one is the natural resources element goal, and that is to preserve, enhance, and revitalize natural resources such as rivers, creeks, wetlands, aquatic and wildlife habitat, beaches and dunes, groundwater, forests, farmland soils, and air quality, and take actions to mitigate potential negative impacts of growth and development. And then our fourth goal is the cultural resources element, and that is that cultural, historic, and archaeological resources, unique settlement patterns of traditional low-country communities, such as historically African American communities and family settlements, and traditional activities, such as sweetgrass basket making, should be preserved and protected from potential negative impacts of growth and development. And then we move on to our fifth element, the population element, and that goal is for a socioeconomically diverse and growing population will be accommodated by Charleston County in an environmentally and fiscally sustainable manner with particular attention to low to moderate income residents. And with this element, it will be interesting, because actually Savannah here, Savannah who's working on, oh, there she is. She was talking earlier, she's doing the demographics for this and how the projections from the 2018 plan have far been surpassed for population in this area, maybe because of COVID and the ability for people to move around. So that will be very interesting to see when we get the red lines for this. The next one is the housing element, and the goal there is quality housing that is affordable will be encouraged for people of all ages, incomes, and physical abilities. The transportation element goal is a transportation system that is coordinated with land use patterns and community character. The level of service should support economic development and a high quality of life. The community facilities element goal is that community facilities and services will be provided in a fiscally responsible manner with adequate levels of service and will be coordinated with surrounding jurisdictions and linked to land use planning and development decisions to ensure capacity for expected growth. And then our last three, the mouthful one, the priority investment implementation and coordination element goal is that public infrastructure and planning projects will be prioritized through coordination with adjacent and relevant jurisdictions and agencies. The energy element goal is to promote use of alternative energy sources and energy conservation measures that benefit our community. And then the last one is the resilience element, and that goal is that Charleston County will prioritize resilience in all county plans, policies, and regulations. So when we bring you the plan, we are going to bring you proposed red lines to all of these goals, the needs, the strategies, and then the background of existing conditions, because a lot of things have changed over the last 5 years since we did this. So we'll be bringing all of that to you, and then also incorporating the public input that we get along with it. You want to go over this, or you want me to? Yeah.
Yes.
And you might have said this already, but how do we assess where we are on meeting these goals? Is there a scale? Is there some other measure that says, yes, we've achieved this, we're at 50% of the goal, or?
I think some of them are measurable like that. Yes, this is done and we can move on past that, especially within our work program when we've completed certain projects. But some of them are more along the lines of not nebulous, but continue to do things, keep the urban growth boundary in its place, continue to support certain programs, that type of goal. So we can measure it in, have we done that? It may not be complete, but have we done it, and is it something that we should continue to do?
The goal, remember, let's go back to the comprehensive plan being a guide and a vision. Sometimes the goals are purposely written to technically never be achieved. These, in the sense of these are aspirational and that we want to continue in that direction. Do you see what I'm getting at? Yeah.
I do see what you're saying, and I understand that, and there may be I don't want to say a goal, but it may be good to be able to
See what we have done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Set it off against something. And
Yes.
like, for example, you say the resilience element goal, and this is where we have
Right,
achieved it, or
right.
this is where we are,
Exactly.
or this is how we look at it, or we looked at it in this particular decision that was made.
And a good
That's
example
helpful.
with the resilience one, a good example is the recent adoption in the zoning ordinance of the 40% impervious, maximum impervious cover versus the building cover. That was something that was acted upon, and it met the goal, the overall goal of the resilience element and the strategies within it. So it's like someone described it to me one time. What we do in planning is almost like a mountain that you never get to the top of. You're just always climbing to get there because things change so much. Yeah. Any other questions before we go next? So as far as growth management, I'm sure that y'all are familiar with it, and our growth management is done, the main tool we have is our urban growth boundary. That is something that goes back to the 1999 plan. At that time, it was called an urban suburban edge, and it was not really mapped real clearly, but it was a tool that back in 99, it was recognized that there needs to be, we need to make a differentiation between the urban areas and the rural areas of the county. And in that original map that looked very similar to this, that didn't have it did not have the benefits of GIS, it was basically a printed map with a dashed line that went around basically in this area, and all it said was urban suburban edge. And since then, that is one of the tools that that the county has used over the years since '99 to keep defining and enforcing that urban growth boundary. And we're fortunate that both the town of Mount Pleasant and the city of Charleston have adopted the exact same urban growth boundary line now and going into the future with the benefit of GIS, so that it is exact. And recently, there was always at the last update that we did was the last time that we refined it. The city of Charleston's line and the county's line was just a little bit off by a few properties on Johns Island, and that was corrected, if you will, at that time. And so now the line is where except James Island. Yeah, go ahead. I know Andrew was going to say that. I just remember that.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
The only difference, the city puts their line comes onto James Island and puts the Soul Agree community in the rural area, which they consider it rural, which is just sort of a different viewpoint, a city versus a county. And actually the county's line back in '99 started out doing that as well. And in 2003 with that review, it got moved on to Johns Island where you see now. But other than that, it is exactly
And I remember
the
as
same.
soon as when you said you were going to speak, I was like, oh, I just said something. One of the things too, and we fully expect, during this process that we're probably going to get a lot of participation from Johns Island, and rightfully so. We probably have more linear miles in a geographic area on Johns Island of the urban growth boundary than anywhere else, where it's splitting the urban area and the rural area because of the way the urban growth boundary goes around Maybank Highway and goes in. But one of the things that is very significant for Johns Island is that the Mount Pleasant Charleston water systems, they will not serve sewer outside of the urban growth boundary, which is a real benefit for the folks on Johns Island that believe in having the rural areas outside the urban growth boundary. Because if CWS was willing to serve sewer outside of that urban growth boundary, I would be very concerned that there would be a lot of political pressure to move that line, and there's not any.
There's pressure to move it even without.
Even without that, right? Right. I would add to the pressure, I guess you could say. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the map that basically shows the big picture, overall view of the urban area and the rural areas. And that's what a lot of our ordinances and a lot of our recommendations for rezonings, we always refer to this. Yes.
How does the East Edisto project come into play with that?
I'll let Andrea talk about that one.
When we were doing the 10-year update of the plan in 2008, that was when Midwest Waco had approached the county about that project. And they had asked the county to adopt something in the comprehensive plan called a development of county significance. So if it was over 1,000 acres or greater in size and it had certain attributes, then you could do certain special zoning. And that's how we ended up with the form-based zoning. We wrote the enabling legislation for the form-based zoning and then adopted the development agreement for the project. So that whole chapter in our ZLDR, Chapter 7, is form-based zoning, but it's only written for that one project to be done. So, and I don't know if you caught it in the, when Joel was going through the comprehensive plan amendment criteria, it reference Article 3.17 of the ZLDR. If it's in compliance with that, then you can amend the plan. Well, that is the developments of county significance one. So, yeah, that is how that all kind of fell into place. I think that their development agreement, we worked on it starting with the plan in 2008, and then their development agreement was finally, after all that enabling legislation and everything, was finally adopted in, I think, December of 2015. So
It's outside of it, because it's outside of it, it's got a special.
special designation in the comprehensive plan and then in the zoning ordinance as well. And actually,
And
yeah.
it's essentially defunct at this point, is that they're not doing anything else?
Well,
They have sold off, like, Midwest Waco itself doesn't own any portion of it. There's I think it's Johnson Development owns most of it out of Spartanburg. And they, last year, the town of Ravenel annexed in about 500 or 600 acres of it and approved a plan development for it, where actually Tamara and Matthew have been reviewing plats for that because that's hundreds of units. But not under form-based zoning. But what the county did when that happened was, state law says if you're part of a development agreement and you want to get out of it and annex into another jurisdiction, either everybody has to agree that that's okay, or you have to come to a different agreement. So what the county did was worked with the town and the developer to do an amendment to the development agreement that the town had with the developer at the time, and make sure that a lot of the safeguards that we had in the development agreement with the county followed into that. So, we still have the safeguards for the transportation. They still had to give us the rights of way that were required. They have to pay into the community enhancement fund. That was part of that whole development agreement. But you're right, the rest of it right now, all we're seeing, we have one RV park, and then the rest of it is timbering and mining operations right now. But that doesn't mean that someone couldn't come in and do a community. I think the biggest issue is going to be
So
where
would
they get
the-
sewer.
Would the development agreement still be in effect if somebody else came in?
It is, it's just minus that about 500 acres that went into the town. Other than that, it's still a 50-year, I think it goes out to 2065.
I think that it was, when it was designed and planned, it had densities that only sewer could accommodate, but it doesn't look like the amount of sewer capacity is anywhere near.
Yeah. It's that,
Yeah, it's
Dark
that
black area.
Black area.
yeah.
In fact, that I think that at the time they had planned on having a sewer treatment facility out there, and that
Well, at one
Never
point, they
happened.
were talking about doing spray fields.
yeah, at spray fields, and I think they ran into issues with the only outfall, because you have to have an eventual outfall for a plant, is the Edisto River, and it's so protected, yeah, that it would never happen, I don't think.
So that was perfect. So I was going to have a question. It sounds like the urban growth boundary, it's only effective as long as the sewer can't get outside and the municipalities agree as
Yep,
well.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Right. I mean, it like I think, like Cindy said, that was a good comment. If CWS was if there was an ability from a policy point of view that CWS would provide sewer outside, the pressure would be. I don't think you'd be able to stop it. Yeah, it's one of those things. If the infrastructure's there, it takes an incredible amount of political will not to do it.
But that infrastructure doesn't go to like the town of Ravenel or Megget or
So Ravenel and, well, not Maggot.
more
but,
complicated than
That's
that.
another story.
Ravenel and Hollywood, thinking right, yeah. Ravenel and Hollywood, they actually have an agreement with CWS to provide a certain number of taps. But it is, Mega does too, okay. But it's nowhere near the amount that, that would accommodate,
Well, they
the
don't
build
have
out.
enough to actually
Yeah.
make the sewer system work. So that's one of the reasons why they wanted to annex this property and to get enough people
I got you.
Go-
Okay. Yeah.
going into the sewer so it would actually function.
Right. They need the demand in order to.
Right.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that may
I had to tell Oakland.
change in the future. Who knows? All right. Oh, do you want to talk about future land use?
So the growth management map translates into which is our future land use map. And this is where all of our recommendations come from. So each individual property is broken down into a future land use category that it talks about densities. A lot of them have density ranges associated with them, which are then, implemented through the ZLDR. And they also have kind of a list of general uses that should be allowed in these areas. So they go from the rural areas where like the dark green areas, which in the East Cooper area, a lot of that is the national forest, and in the western Charleston County, a lot of that was the West Baco property. That dark green area is 1 unit per 25 acres. So that translates into our resource management district. In that rural area, the highest density we have are the settlement areas, which are the AGR zoned areas, 1 unit per acre. And that was done through a study in '99 where they looked at properties with certain criteria, because at the time, properties were, your minimum lot size was 30,000 square foot. So basically that was your density. So taking you to 1 unit per 25 acres was a big jump. So they looked at properties with certain characteristics and gave them this density of 1 unit per acre. It's like minimum lots, you had to have a property size of 30 acres of highland or less. So you typically won't find any AGR properties that are greater than 30 acres. They had to be, close to other ag zone properties and in certain development patterns. And so that's how those properties were designated as AGR versus those that got the 1 unit per 8 acres, 1 unit per 10 acres, and 1 unit per 25 acre densities. And then along the urban growth boundary on the rural side, we have the RR, well now it's RR, but at the time it was RR3 zoning, which was 1 unit per 3 acres with the ability to go to 1 unit per acre at the time only through plan development. We have since built in the ability to do a conservation subdivision to get there. And then the higher densities are all within the urban growth boundary. And most of that area, if it's unincorporated, is going to be zoned R4, which is recommended for 4 units per acre or more. We have very few properties that are actually recommended in our mixed use designations, which are the higher densities. And then we have some commercial and industrial recommendations. And then on top of that, we have our overlay zoning districts, which are shown on this map as sort of the crosshatched areas. And they have their own unique regulations. You can see the Sweetgrass Basket Mount Pleasant Overlay District here. We've got the St. Andrews and Highway 61 overlay districts. We've got the Maybank Highway on James Island and Johns Island districts, the Folly Road overlay. And then we've got the Main Road overlay, and then out in Parker's Ferry, we did a community plan for them and an overlay district, and then Soligree as well. And then we have some along Highway 17 North that are also all encompassed within the comprehensive plan.
So all of that hatched area at the southern end of the county is overlay for
That's Parker's Ferry.
Parker's Ferry?
Yeah, that was actually, geographically, it's very large, but it doesn't, it's not really showing, it's not called for a lot of intense development, right?
Yeah, basically what that does was brought back the zoning for some of the commercial areas they had before '99, before that ordinance kind of zoned them out, and then allowed them, in some instances, they had some AG10 and AG8 pieces, but it gave them a density of 1 unit per acre on those parcels, so they could go back to what they had before '99.
It was to help promote the family lands that had been out there and not zone them out and sort of keep that village density of 1 to 1.
Yeah, probably one of the most well-attended series of public workshops we've ever been to.
Well attended compared to the population that actually lived there. We packed the community center out there, and 95% of what we presented and what they wanted, they were all on the same page. So that was one of the best, it was one of the easiest plans for us to work on. They were very clear on what they wanted. They were all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is our future land use residential densities table. It splits it into the rural area, and then we've got the form-based zoning district, and then the urban and suburban area. So we have each of our future land use categories listed along with the densities that go with them. Conservation management is typically looked at as resource management. And we have special regulations for that in the zoning ordinance in our overlay and special purpose zoning districts chapter 5. And then the resource management, those dark green areas that were on the map, those are those that are recommended for 1 unit per 25 acres, and that's how they're zoned. The Wabala Island Agricultural Preservation recommendation, that's the AG 15 zoning district. So that's zoned at 1 unit per 15 acres. You can see here the recommended density is 1 unit per 15 acres up to 1 unit per 7 acres, with the caveat that the area of a parcel within that district within 1,000 feet of the critical line has a maximum density of 1 unit per 3 acres. That's been in there since the beginning of the plan. Agricultural preservation, that's our AG 10 district. That's 1 unit per 10 acres with the ability to get to 1 unit per 5 acres. And the only way to get there is through a planned development. Except that is not allowed on Ediso. It has to be kept at 1 unit per 10 acres. The rural agricultural AG 8 zoning district, that is 1 unit per 8 acres to 1 unit per 4 acres. When the plan was first developed, the only way to get there was through the planned development. Now we have our conservation subdivision, which allows you to get to 1 unit per 4 acres if you meet the requirements, and that's all at a staff level approval. The rural residential category is implemented through the RR3 zoning district. That's 1 unit per 3 acres with the ability to get to 1 unit per acre. Again, the only way to get that upper end at the time this was originally done was through the plan development. Now you can get that through the conservation subdivision. And then we have our rural cultural community protection areas, which are the historic African American settlement areas. And they have a pretty big range, 1 unit per 25 acres to 1 unit per acre. Parker's Ferry was in that. We've got Germantown. These are not permitted on Wadmalaw or Edisto Islands. Our form-based zoning districts, they don't really have a cap on density. It is really just that one district for Meade-Westvaco. And then within the urban and suburban area, we only have two districts, the urban suburban cultural community protection districts, which are the historic African American communities within the urban area. Those are 1 to 4 units per acre. Most of them are zoned in the S3 zoning district at 3 units the acre. We do have a couple, 10 Mile and Red Top specifically, that are zoned R4, which is 4 units per acre. And then the urban suburban mixed use is basically the rest of the urban and suburban area for recommendation, and that is 4 or more dwelling units per acre with recommendations about where office, commercial, and those types of non-residential uses should be allowed.
Any questions on that? This is the work plan that is currently in the comprehensive plan. This is for staff, this is a very important part of the plan, because it basically gives us our roadmap of what Planning Commission and County Council wants us to prioritize in the 5 years to the next review or update. And you'll see, I won't go through the whole list, but I'll go through a couple of them. Like the first one we did. Second one we did. Mount Pleasant overlay we're currently working on. Reinforce the location of the urban growth boundary. I have a feeling that it's something that might become more prioritized and move up in the list. Let's see, community resilience element for the comp plan, that's done. Some of these I think we need to revisit to see if they're really necessary, like a Wabala Island community plan. I think Wabala is happy with the zoning they have, and when I say that, both the rural and the commercial areas of Wabala. Rethink Folly implementation. That's an ongoing project. Some of these will stay on here because they're ongoing. Yeah. So just basically, we're going to try to get this finished sometime this fall, this winter. If it happens to go over a little bit, we're okay with that. We're committed to having a good plan that has a lot of participation from the Planning Commission and from the community, and we'll see what comes out of it. As we relayed to you, we know certainly that the vision statement will be something that'll be revisited, and then from there, the normal things of updating the goals and strategies and objectives.
So Savannah down there, raise your hand, Savannah, and Monica here. They are our project leads, and they have been working very hard, working with other departments and other agencies to get updates for all of the inventory of existing conditions, and then put the public survey out there. And now, trying to figure out how to incorporate the survey comments. So starting in February, what we'll do is we'll have a red line version of the plan that incorporates, staff's comments, information from all the other jurisdictions and departments and agencies that we've been working with, and then the public comment that we think is appropriate to be included in the plan, incorporated as red lines. Anything we don't think is appropriate, we will provide to you so you can decide whether or not it's appropriate to be included, and we'll give you the reason why we didn't include it. And then we'll just start from the top with that vision statement and roll through the plan. And then once we get to a point where you guys are okay with that initial look at it all, that's when we'll schedule our public workshops to take that out to the public. And then we will bring back to you the information and input we got from the public for you to make your final recommendation to county council. So, and then we'll take it on through the adoption process. So that is our plan moving forward.
And just as a side note, another thing we know pretty certain is we've already got it in the staff draft, is we're going to rename the energy element to include sustainability because now we have a sustainability director and officer. And there's actually a resilience and sustainability committee that's been created that will be meeting regularly because that resilience issue and sustainability issue kind of covers much wider than just planning and zoning. And so they'll be making recommendations not only to the zoning ordinance, but to the county as a whole and facilities and other departments as well. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
Warwick does.
Yes.
You've sort of talked about the plan and sort of its aims and what you can do, but for the benefit of the public that's not here,
Mike.
for the benefit of the public that's not here,
Then help.
should we not say some things about the things that we can't do? I mean, there's been a number of occasions when people have come and said, oh my gosh, look what's happening at Johns Island. We're not prepared for this. But we can't do anything about it because it would be takings to change the zoning. And there's many people who don't quite understand that to some extent our hands are tied to what was decided many years ago and may not be in accordance with the plan. And the other thing too, in terms of roads, we don't have complete jurisdiction over all of the roads. The state has jurisdiction, and there's nothing much we can do. We can complain and moan and groan, and something may happen and something may not happen. But, being a planning commission, sometimes it's happened. Geez, you're on the planning commission. How did you let all of this happen? Well, some things are beyond our control.
I blame it on the municipalities.
Beg your pardon?
I blame it on the municipalities.
Yeah, as far as the zoning goes, we just went through the Zeldar amendments, which wanted to come closer to reflecting what the comp plan says. And if you recall, during that time, to make that differentiation between the urban areas and the rural areas, staff had some, to some people, they might not be, some pretty radical proposals. We upped the density in the industrial areas and the commercial zoned areas. And we attempted to increase the density in our single-family detached residential area, which was not accepted too well, primarily because of the amount of R4 that we had on Johns Island, and that the impact of increasing the densities countywide still had an impact in the rural areas of Johns Island because of traffic, basically. For me, I don't foresee that there will be any proposed changes of recommended densities in that density table. Now, we'll see what happens as it goes through the process. But as you said, Warwick, and as Cindy said, that table and that one page in the comprehensive plan, that table was very hard fought on both ends, both sides. The preservationists and cultural and conservationists were happy with it, and in the end, the property rights and folks were happy with it. I think we need to be careful if we start playing with that and changing zoning. That's just my opinion. It could make it a very lengthy process if we did. But we'll see what happens.
I'm not advocating change, I'm just saying
Okay.
that it's a problem.
Yes.
I'm really saying what you're saying, I guess.
Yeah. As far as the roads go, I mean, when something comes through the planning and zoning department for development plans, we require coordination with whether it's the state or county road. They're the ones that dictate whether the road can support, or what improvements, let me say it different, what improvements may need to be required, improvements to the road may be required to accommodate the development. But of course, what happens over time is the cumulative effect of that. It becomes more than a turn lane or a light. The whole corridor eventually has to be widened. Yeah.
I'm just curious, do y'all have any updates on road improvements for Johns Island that y'all have heard of?
Yes, I mean, we're not prepared to give them now, but we can. The transportation department has a priority list of the road improvements that are scheduled to be occurred on Johns Island. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it. There's a segment A, B, and C along Main Road. That's what they're mostly looking at now. There's a flyover over 17 that will be built, and basically an extension of Main Road, but it will go over 17. We can have someone from the transportation department, if you're interested in that, to come speak about all of the improvements that are scheduled for the county, and primarily on Johns Island, if that's what you're interested in.
Nothing about the forks.
The pitchfork, I mean, the northern pitchfork, the last I heard, has been fully funded and is getting ready to go under construction.
Under construction.
Yeah, under construction. The southern pitchfork, I'd have to get someone from transportation to discuss more about if that's still in the works.
Yeah, but the northern one.
It's only been 12 years.
I know, yeah. There's a funding process. They have to go through that to get these road improvements prioritized, and transportation folks can describe it more. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't.
the funding requirements compared to 526.
Yeah. That's not under my.
Not my field.
Not my field, right? I'll stick with rezonings. How about that?
Since we're talking about funding and things like that, and Marlena touched on it a little bit, but regarding goals, I see a lot of comments about fiscal responsibility, but have we ever just demonstrated that our development is following, that it's paying for itself, or at the very least is able to sustain itself financially? And not that I need an answer, but I think it's more of a point that the comprehensive plan, not necessarily in review, but ultimately, like, especially if we're going to address goals, there should be at least an attempt to demonstrate
an
it.
aspirational
If the
goal.
aspiration is like way out there and it's not possible to even hit, it's not really worth having. So, and I think that there's a lot of things that could be fixed by just making sure we would stick to that, but there's no, that one's at least measurable, I think,
Yeah.
and we're not attempting to. Well, at least that I'm aware of, but.
I know there's been a lot of studies on impact fees, and how does that work? How will that, it's somewhere in those studies?
And they
So we staff actually proposed over the years,
impact.
at least once, about introducing impact fees. And at the time, Planning Commission, I don't know what Planning Commission's recommendation was, but I think that County Council was not amenable to it. I think it was just after the county adopted the half-cent sales tax program. And at the time, it sounded like council was not ready to, have this half-cent sales tax, which is supposed to address transportation issues. And then on top of that, ask a developer to put money into, for impact fees, and normally speaking, those impact fees are done for road projects.
Right.
And I know that the town had impact fees for quite a while. I mean, you might, yeah. Do you want to, we've never implemented them in the county, but can you talk about how the town may have benefited from those over the years?
Well, the concept behind it, I guess, is I don't know everybody's name. The gentleman down here that mentioned to it is for growth to pay for itself. And the idea of the impact fees is that that new growth generates the need for additional services and capital improvement projects. You can't use it for stuff like operations or maintenance. It's a one-time big deal, and at least with respect to the transportation fees, those have worked out fairly well for the town. And obviously the most expensive component of it, but it's much like the whole comprehensive planning process. You get a transportation plan in place that the town will actually fund and build, and implement that through a capital improvements plan which involves various revenue streams. But a good portion of it is the revenue stream that comes from the new development, and it's either a per unit charge to a household if you have a residential unit, or a square footage amount based on commercial or industrial or institutional type uses. It's worked out pretty well for the town overall, I'd say. The home builders hate it, as you can tell if you keep up with articles in the newspaper. Not just Mount Pleasant either. Other places, some places, I think maybe Berkeley or Dorchester, they wound up having to give some of their money back because they didn't use it. So you have to use it, and it's predicated to a planning process that should be evaluated and reviewed on a periodic basis so that you can determine which parts of it have been completed, and if the fee you're charging is actually still commensurate with the cost it's going to cost to build it. And it really wasn't very controversial when it was initially adopted. In fact, I was hired as an intern in 1988 to work on the comprehensive the impact fee plan along with Mac and Joel Ford. And nobody really opposed it in the beginning. Over the course of time, there have been other things added to it. I think the other one that's most controversial next to transportation are the school impact fees. And I'm pretty sure for a while in South Carolina, the General Assembly did not allow that. They didn't allow it at all. And so we had to be careful of what we crafted because people get sued, and if you don't do it right, it'll get overturned. And I'm not sure even now, I know Mount Pleasant doesn't have a school impact fee now, but I'm not sure if you can even do that in the state. But those are the two biggies, transportation and schools, which if you think about it, those are the ones that you hear the most complaints about new growth having the impacts on that, and drainage too. But I think the town has another drainage fee that it implements that's it's not quite an impact fee, but I believe the state enabling legislation allows local jurisdictions to collect fees, not taxes, but fees for those types of things.
And the county has a stormwater fee as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another big one that everybody's concerned about.
And I didn't necessarily mean that in the way of impact fees, and surely that is a way that you could kind of approach it. But I think that a lot, like the urban growth boundary, for instance, how it's partially enforceable by CWS not servicing sewer outside of the urban growth boundary. Historically, cities are constrained because of economic factors. And then we kind of finance things so crazily that you can kind of go nuts and sprawl out, but then can't afford the maintenance cost 20 years down the road. So it was just a comment as far as goals and fiscal responsibility, that if we were to adhere to it, then it could probably have benefits. But I don't know if we're necessarily adhering to it, is I guess what I'm saying.
I mean, as far as development paying for itself, what I've heard from a planning perspective, single-family detached homes don't create any revenue. They cost a municipality money. It's when you get into multifamily and commercial is when you start recouping development paying for itself, so to speak. Yeah. That's just sort of the way it works.
Right.
Right, because the numbers aren't there. Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, we have the rest of
We're
it.
going to go through the others.
There's 30 more slides? Yeah.
Are we going to go through all of them?
This is a schedule. We'll try to speed it up, sorry. Yeah. This is our schedule. So Andrew went over these, our workshops this spring, and taking it to, with planning commission involved through the whole time, then taking it to county council at the end of the year. So the ordinance that implements the comp plan applies to all development in the unincorporated areas of the county. It provides minimum development requirements. It specifies whether properties can be used residential, office, or commercial, or industrial. It regulates how big properties must be, the number of homes that can be placed on a property, basically density, and includes site design requirements for non-residential. So all of the things that Jennifer Stiles in our office does under site plan review, and including tree protection. Also, a zoning permit is required for whenever we issue a building permit. Every building permit requires a zoning permit. Any kind of land disturbance, grading, filling, surfacing, constructing of driveways, all of that requires a zoning permit. Parking lots, of course. Any change in use, including an increase in the number of families or dwelling units in a building or lot, that requires a zoning permit, and whatever process that applies to them. The installation of any sign requires a zoning permit. Moving any house or manufactured home, obtaining a business license, and that zoning permit is to establish your business, and what we're saying there is that business is allowed in this zoning district. So you're not getting a zoning permit to construct anything, you're getting the zoning permit to say this is an allowed use. This is, real quickly, just wanted to show you our permitting process for single-family residential. Again, starting from the left to the right, everything always starts with a zoning permit. Application is made and submitted. It goes, it's reviewed, and the permit is issued. If the permit's issued, it will go straight to building department, If the property needs a variance or is in a historic district, it will have to sidetrack off of that before the permit is issued and go to the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Historic Preservation Commission. Building Services then reviews the plans. Public Works looks at it for any encroachment permits that may be needed, and also for stormwater approval. And Building Services reviews the plans, and inspections are done both by Building Services and Public Works to make sure they meet their permit requirements, and a CO is issued after all of those inspections. As far as non-residential, non-single-family residential, similar, it still starts with going to the Zoning and Planning Department for an application. It goes through our site plan review process then. That committee is made up of folks from Public Works and DOT and DHEC. We used to actually, in the old days, when I did it 21 years ago, we actually had those people sitting around the table. Now everyone's just emailing with each other, but they're still part of the approval process. Building Inspection Services, it goes to them after that site plan is approved. Zoning and Planning follows it through with tree barricades and silt fencing, along with Public Works. The Building Inspection Services does their inspections, and before the CO is issued, though, Zoning and Planning Department will inspect the site because there are required landscaping requirements, making sure the parking lot was built the way it was designed or laid out the way it was designed, and other site-specific things that gets into zoning. Zoning map amendments, they're done when there's a request to change the zoning of the property. Application process must be requested by the owner of the subject property, and the process is a pre-application meeting, planning commission recommendation, public hearing, county council, and public works committee recommendation. County council, public works, and then the 3 readings. Staff always encourages the applicants to contact adjacent property owners in the surrounding community, adjacent to jurisdictions and community groups before submitting the application. Planning Commission makes a recommendation that is done by a majority vote of the entire membership, and the commission may only recommend approval or disapproval for rezoning requests to zoning districts other than the PD zoning district. So you can't make conditions on a rezoning from residential to commercial. It's all or nothing, right? Zoning map amendments must be approved only if the proposed amendment meets one or more of the criteria. The proposed amendment is consistent with the comp plan and the purpose of the ZLDR. The proposed amendment will allow development that is compatible with existing uses, recommended density, established dimensional standards and zoning, and nearby properties that will benefit the public good while avoiding the arbitrary change that primarily benefits a single. That's what they kind of call spot zoning, right? The proposed amendment corrects or a zoning map error or inconsistency, and the proposed amendment addresses events, trends, and facts that are significantly change the character of or condition of the area. The applicant creates a requested zoning, a text. That's for plan. Yeah, I'll let you do plan developments.
All right, just a little background on plan developments. Before you get them, there's a lot of work that goes on between the applicant and staff. They have their pre-application meeting with them. We go over all the requirements from the ordinance. We have a checklist that we give them that mirrors those requirements. And then they create their first draft, which is the text and the conceptual plans that are required, and they submit it to staff. We review it first for completeness. We won't review it for substantive comments until it is complete. But once it is complete and has everything in it, whether or not we agree with it, if it's all there, then we distribute it to our staff and Public Works staff, Public Works Engineering, Roads, and Stormwater look at it as well. We have 15 working days to return comments. We return comments, then it's on the applicant to resubmit a revised draft to us to review, and we go through that process until all the requirements are met. And at that time, we allow them to make their formal submittal. There are some things during that time period that may be required. They may have to do a presentation of their conceptual plan to you all during that time, which you've seen several of those. The threshold is 50 or more dwelling units or 5 or more acres of non-residential development, or Joel can tell them they need to do it for some other reason. If he knows it's a controversial one, or they need to, get some more feedback from you as well as the public. Those workshops are workshops. There's no action taken. It's just a chance for feedback and discussion about the project. And again, with these, it's the same adoption process, and the Planning Commission recommendation requires a majority vote of the entire membership. So, and then the criteria are a little different, and you see these at our staff report. We respond to these. There are 3 that have to be met. All 3 of them have to be met. With rezonings, it's one of those has to be met. All 3 of these must be met for a plan development. It's that the PD complies with the standards contained in ZLDR Article 4.25, which is the plan development article. It's consistent with the intent of the comprehensive plan and other adopted policy documents. And the county and other agencies are able to provide necessary public services, facilities, and programs to serve the development proposed at the time the property is developed. Part of the requirements to do a plan development are the letters of coordination from those service providers, and they do have to be dated within 6 months of their submittal, so we know that they are current. So, there you go. Want to take these, or you want me to go? You go.
Let's see. Text amendments and appeals of subdivision-related decisions. Planning Commission recommendation, of course, is a majority of the vote. Amendments to the ZLDR may be approved by County Council only if the following criteria: the proposed amendment corrects an error or inconsistency, the proposed amendment is consistent with the comp plan and goals, and the proposed amendment is to further the public welfare in any other regard specified by County Council. Appeals of subdivision-related decisions, at least 2/3 of the members, so this is different, it's not just a majority, present and voting are required to reverse any order, requirement, decision, or determination. I don't know if you all recall, I think we've had at least one appeal of a subdivision in the last couple of years that Tamara came up and gave that presentation. It was in Riverland Terrace. A neighbor appealed the approval of the subdivision.
Joel, I have a question about your text amendments. How do they get initiated? Who initiates those? They come from staff, Planning Commission, council,
It can be
citizens?
all 3, all 4.
All 4?
Yeah. So a citizen, if they want to do a text amendment, we have forms, and we walk them through the process, and they are the applicant. Staff can do it based on a trend of what we're seeing and how we administer the ordinance. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Kent, that as years go by, you realize, wait, this ordinance isn't working, or we've been doing it a certain way, and the language might not be exactly like that.
Right.
So let's clarify that. What you just missed, when I say about a year ago, we completed an update, basically an overhaul of our whole ordinance. And that took us about 3 years, 2 years, yeah. And that had a lot of changes in it. So we're hoping that there won't be another overhaul for a while. But as you know, ordinances are dynamic, not quite as dynamic as comp plans, and they're always being changed. But County Council could also request to look into certain ordinances as well, and we do that. So, and then Planning Commission.
Thanks.
Yep. Variances and special exceptions, that's done by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and you all don't see those, obviously. The request is to deviate from the specific zoning land development requirements, such as a setback or a buffer, tree protection. Special exception are use-based. They're not measurable items like a variance. So we have a list of uses in Chapter 6 of our ordinance that are allowed, but only with a special exception approval. So all of those would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. These regulars include alcohol sales, special events. Mining operations were a big one for a long time until we changed the ordinance recently. So that's those. Application process requires submittal by the property owner and approval by the BZA.
Just so you know, we have a lot of those cases. They typically have 10 cases a month.
Yes.
So they're actually going to start at 5 o'clock tonight, and I think they've got 10 cases on the agenda this evening, don't
Yep,
they?
they do. They
Yeah.
regularly have 10 cases, and because they're quasi-judicial, so yeah, you're getting off easy today. Okay? Poor Jenny, she does a great job, but because they're quasi-judicial, talking about a process of a meeting that has to be run, it all has to be recorded, and minutes have to be made that are accurate, and if there's an appeal, all those minutes get, a transcript has to be created, and it's very procedural. Yeah.
We're at the BZA now.
What did he say?
I'm sorry.
So if anyone wants to change the Board of Zoning Appeals, just let us know. Yeah. Tree ordinance, as you know, we have a pretty big tree ordinance. Basically any tree 24 inches or greater in diameter. And prior to permitting, a tree survey must show all those trees. We do a site inspection to determine the removal. Sally is a certified arborist. We also have another staff member who's leaving, unfortunately, but we're going to replace him with an arborist as well. All grand trees that do not meet the approval criteria require variances. Site plan review is a big part of what we do, and I know that y'all may have not met her, but Jennifer Stiles in our office, she's our site plan review coordinator. She does an excellent job, and her workload is comparable to the Board of Zoning Appeals. She has a staff of 3, including herself as well, that reviews those. But basically, anything that's single-family residential goes through that site plan review process. So all those zoning ordinance amendments that talks about development and trees and setbacks and where buildings should be and the parking lot, Jennifer Stiles administers all of that. Subdivision applications, Tamara Avery behind me and our staff, she administers the subdivision. Basically, a subdivision is a division of a property into 2 or more lots. Application must be signed off by the owner of the property. We have pre-application meetings with other staff, DOT, DHEC, and other agencies that may be applicable. The plat is submitted with an application fee and distributed to applicable department agencies, and comments are mailed to the surveyor. Nowadays emailed, and revised plat is submitted for final approval by all agencies. As you can imagine, a simple 1 lot into 2 lots is one thing, but when you have a 3-phased, 500 lot subdivision, it can be quite complicated and lengthy, and Tamara has a few of those going on right now. And she's going to give a presentation, in fact, and talk about a little bit about that. I'm sure y'all want to see another one. So.
Hi, I'll try to keep this short and sweet for y'all. So I came in April and did a presentation, and I'm just giving a review of this past calendar year because your commission does delegate the subdivision process to staff, so I don't bring my applications to you, except for if somebody appeals, which we've only had 1 appeal in the 7 years that I've been here, so we're doing pretty good. And the commission ruled in staff's favor. So in any event, my name's Tamara Avery. I have been with the county for 7 years. Previous to the county, I actually did land development, so I was on the opposite side, and I did due diligence, land acquisition, through permitting, infrastructure, closeout, lots ready. So I've seen it on both sides now, from the applicant and the approving agency. In July, we hired Matthew. So Matthew is our planner 1. So we've divided responsibilities that I do major subdivisions, and Matthew's taken on exempt plats and minor subdivisions. And we have Sharon Lynn, and she's our admin assistant. So she handles all of our applications and puts them through the process and checks and balances and makes sure that all of our files are in order. So who do we review for? We review for unincorporated Charleston County, town of Ravenel, town of James Island if it's over 4 lots, because that's considered a major subdivision for them, and the town of Rockville. types of subdivisions are exempt. So that would be like a boundary survey, or if you're just platting an ingress egress easement where you're not actually creating a lot. A minor subdivision, which is 4 lots or less, and a major subdivision. So major subdivision goes through a preliminary plat process, and we used to have conditional plats available, but we took that out with the last ordinance amendments. So the only developer that can do that is Kiowa River, because it was in their development agreement. So they can still do conditional plats. Essentially, conditional plats are where you bond 2 public infrastructures, and after preliminary plat approval, you get the bonds approved through legal, and then we can record a conditional plat, and it actually creates the lots and gets individual TMS numbers so that they can get legal descriptions and sell the lots before the infrastructure is in place. Only Kiowa River can do that now. And then major subdivision final, that's when all the infrastructure is in place and you've closed out with the county. And then we record the lots at the plats at the Register of Deeds office. And so I just kind of went over that of what type of exempt plats, minor subdivisions. So what do we look for when we look for minor subdivision? We actually need to make sure that it's a viable lot for a potential buyer. So we verify the zoning and density of the parcels. We verify proposed lots meet the minimum lot standards. Those are in Chapter 4 of our ZLDR. Anything under an acre, we have them survey grand trees to make sure that we have a buildable area outside of the protective zone. And then that they have legal access. So I know we were talking about transportation earlier. So the county has SCDOT roads, county roads, jurisdictional roads, private roads. So during our plat process, we require coordination letters from those agencies to verify that they would be able to be permitted with an encroachment permit for legal access. And then water and sewer availability, we also ask for letters of coordination with that. If it's a lateral connection, then we ask for the impact and tap fees to be paid prior to the plat being recorded. And for instance, if it's a major subdivision, then you go through preliminary plat and you just have to provide us with the permits. And then at closeout, we ask for DHEC permit to operate. And so permit to operate means that they've actually closed out with the water and sewer agencies. DHEC's approved it, and the municipality is going to take over ownership of, or not the municipality, but the water sewer company is going to take over ownership of those lots. Or not lots, lines, water and sewer lines. So a major subdivision is now 5 lots or more. That was a difference with the ZLDR as well, because minor subdivisions used to be 10 lots or less, and now they're 4 lots or less. And major subdivisions are 5 lots or more. And the big change was in the previous ordinance, you could have an ingress egress easement accessing 10 lots, and that was just 20-foot wide earth road. But now we require 5 lots or more to have a right-of-way, which is a 50-foot wide right-of-way, 22-foot wide access, and you meet secondary county road standards. So if a road currently has 3 lots and they want to subdivide off an additional 3, that kicks it to 6 lots, and they're going to need to improve the road to a right-of-way with secondary county road standards.
Does that involve paving?
No, it can be gravel. It just has to have swells and positive drainage. Yeah, it doesn't have to be paved. No. So the major subdivision process, we start with preliminary plat. In about 2-3 years ago, we also started working with stormwater parallel. Because we were realizing that we would approve subdivisions that met our ZLDR requirements as far as lot layouts, but when it came into stormwater and their calculations, it wasn't working. So they maybe needed larger ponds or additional drainage features. So we started about 3 years ago working with stormwater pretty closely, so that I do the initial review. I make sure that it meets our lot standards, and then I ask them to submit to stormwater so that they can start that review process as well. And we will not approve the preliminary plat until there is stormwater approval. And and permits received. So before they get clearing and grading, they need to show me that they have permits from all the other jurisdictional agencies and that it's a viable project and can move forward. And then they also give us a copy of construction drawings, which Stormwater and Public Works also reviews to make sure that there's nothing conflicting between the original preliminary plat and then what they're actually going to construct. That happens a lot with grand trees. They might use or move an easement or a road slightly. And so we need to make sure that those are protected. And then our staff will go out and do a grand tree barricade inspection. And once we have the permits, construction drawings approved, tree barricade inspection, that's when we will release the clearing and grading permit, and they can begin construction. So kind of where did we land in 2022? So, you know, in 2020, we had 234 applications. 2021, we had 312, and last year we had 340 applications. So that's new applications, and with new applications, it goes through several review processes. So, I mean, we could look at one plat 3 or 4 times. And then that's not only, we're not only working with the 340, we're working with some from the previous year. So it's a lot of review, it's a lot of staff time, and that's why we're very thankful that Matthew's here. And then the types of plats, just so you can kind of see how they've changed. We've seen a lot of, obviously, increase in major subdivisions, but then we're also seeing where people that own property, you know, might just try to subdivide off a lot so that they could pay off their first mortgage or give it to a child or a family member. So we're seeing a lot of that come through, just where, you know, they may not have thought it was feasible at first, but now they realize it is, and they want to create those lots. So these are just a few of the major subdivisions that are currently in process for approval. You know, Cacique's ongoing down at towards Kiowa.
Is Hoopstick active again?
It is. Yeah. It is. They're doing 10 lots. We've done the initial review and they've submitted for revisions. So that's on my plate for review. Kiowa River, that's ongoing. You know, that's going to be essentially 1,800 lots once it's built out. We have Sea Island Preserve. That's going to be on Johns Island. That's 380 lots. We're reviewing for the town of Ravenel, Golden Grove. First phase is 192 lots. Phase 2 is 189 lots. And then, you know, we kind of have some medium developments going in, like Murray Creek's on Johns Island, Miller Crossings, that's on Johns Island. St. John's Phase 7, I think that was 210, maybe 260 lots. But anyway, Phase 7 is their last phase. So they're about to be built out. And then the Waterloo, so that was adjacent to the initial Waterloo subdivision, and that 21 lots, that falls under the conservation subdivision as well. They're fully permitted. They have been for about 6 months, but they haven't started construction because they can't make the numbers work. So, and then 2022 recap. So we had 340 applications, 64 pre-apps. 238 plats were recorded at the Register of Deeds, and that created 645 new lots for Charleston County. Yep. And that's it. Any questions? No. Okay.
All right, just a real quick overview of our historic preservation ordinance. We had an ordinance in the ZLDR for years and years, but it didn't have a lot of teeth in it. Didn't really mean a whole lot. So we revamped our historic preservation, and that was adopted in 2018. Remember, we had a committee of a planning commission that worked very hard on that, and that ultimately ended up being adopted. So after it was adopted in 2018, we created the Historic Preservation Commission, and they started meeting in 2019. They didn't have a whole lot of cases at first, so they did a lot of education, and then they started getting cases. And so they've had cases, you know, pretty consistently since that time. What our ordinance now does is it creates a path for communities or properties to be designated locally. So our county list includes all of those on the National Register site, or National Register properties, but also any that the county has designated. We've had quite a few. We've had 3 churches, they're listed here in the bottom bullet. The Hebron Center, St. Mark's UME Church, and Bethel AME Church. Those were individual properties that they came to the county and asked to be designated. And then we've had several communities, the Phillips community, 10 Mile, and the Beefield, which is down on southern James Island, have been designated as district. So really what this does, it provides a public process where communities can be informed of applications that might be staff level approval, like subdivision. The subdivision occurs in 10 Mile, before they were designated, they wouldn't know about it until construction started. Well, now, they will know about it, or a site plan review application, they will know about it and have to come to the HPC for approval. And really any kind of zoning permit or approval has to go to the HPC for approval if it's within those districts or on those properties. So. And then our upcoming projects, just comprehensive plan review, obviously. And then Joel had mentioned the Mount Pleasant Overlay Zoning District update, which hopefully will bring you in the next couple of, sorry, I didn't flip it. Next couple of months. We're working with the town of Mount Pleasant staff on that. And then overlay zoning districts for settlement communities as requested. We're currently working with 10 Mile. So hopefully we'll bring that to you soon as well. All right, getting to the end.
Yeah, we're coming close here. I think Emily Nguyen is actually going to close us out with just some of the rules and procedure for the Planning Commission. So, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully a lot of y'all know this already, but the Planning Commission is comprised of 9 members appointed by County Council. Terms are dependent upon County Council. A quorum consists of 5 or more members. And a term year lasts from March 1st to February 28th each year. Regularly scheduled Planning Commission meetings are held on the second Monday of each month in the PSB, which is where we're currently seated. And special meetings may be authorized by the chair or a majority of the Planning Commission members at a time or place designated by the same. Special meetings do still need to be noticed. 24-hour notice or notice as required by state law must be given to all members of the commission and the public. As far as voting is concerned, at all Planning Commission meetings, each attending member can cast 1 vote per votable agenda item. Members with a conflict of interest in an application must follow procedures for disclosure/disqualification and must recuse themselves. The chair will call for voice votes, and typically the roll will be called by staff, with each member verbally casting their vote when their name is called. After a vote is taken, the Planning Commission has 30 calendar days to submit their recommendation to County Council. As far as meeting procedures are concerned, all applications to be considered by the Planning Commission must be complete and filed with administrative staff at least 6 weeks prior to the next regularly scheduled meeting. That's what Marcia and I spend all our time doing. All agenda items have to meet all notification requirements as outlined by the ZLDR and South Carolina state law. We do go a little bit above and beyond that as well, just to ensure that everyone who might have an interest in knowing what's going on in their community is aware that they can come sit in on these meetings. Individuals who wish to speak before the Planning Commission do need to sign in and provide the name, address, and agenda item they are discussing. It's very important that we get this information so that we can properly disclose that in our minutes. Meetings of the Planning Commission are conducted in accordance with the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Orders, except when in conflict with adopted county or state law and ordinances. Conduct. Only the Planning Commission chair or his or her designee may speak on behalf of the Planning Commission. This does not limit the ability of an individual member of the Planning Commission to speak publicly, but you must clarify that opinions expressed are your own. Commissioners may express their views or request information without any limitation on any subject, provided that no member of the commission may speak for the commission unless directed by the chair. Attendance. When a commissioner is unable to attend a meeting, they must notify staff in advance. Staff will notify the chair of the anticipated absence. And typically, we will kind of take roll via email prior to the meeting to ensure that we will have a quorum before the meeting. Each member is allowed 3 absences during a term year. If absences exceed 3 total, the chair must provide written notice to the appointing council member. Officers, and this is something we will deal with next month, the officers of the Planning Commission shall consist of the chair and vice chair as elected by the commission for terms of 1 year, with both offices to retain all official duties and responsibilities until the next election of officers, as set forth below. Before the close of its meeting in February, the current chair or vice chair shall call for open nominations. Members will select by majority vote of the membership. One of its members is chair, and then one of its members is vice chair for the new year. The newly elected chair and vice chair shall begin their terms upon completion of the meeting in which they are elected. It's important to note that in the event that neither of the current chair or vice chair are reappointed, the planning director shall open the first meeting of the new commission and call for nominations, first for the chair, then for the vice chair. Members will select by majority vote of the membership one of its members as chair, then one of its members as vice chair for the new year. Terms for the new office holders will begin immediately thereafter. Rules and procedures can be amended at any regular meeting of the Planning Commission, provided that the proposed amendment is introduced at the prior regular meeting. Some questions we had for y'all. First, we wanted to know if you were interested in moving annual elections to March of each year, starting in 2024. So we wouldn't be able to do it this year, but if you have an interest in it, we can move elections to March just to give us more time to get kind of our ducks in a row, because it does become a little bit difficult at the beginning of a new year after elections. People are still getting appointed at the beginning of January, and it's a little bit rushed, so we wanted to propose that for you. And then we also wanted to propose holding an annual meeting at the March meeting each year. And during that, we would give a presentation that would provide you with 1.5 hours, which is half of your required training at that meeting. So if that's of interest to you.
Don't forget the sandwich.
Oh, and the sandwich, of course.
That would be in addition to the regularly scheduled meeting for your tasks.
Yes.
So we just continue after the meeting, or we?
I like watching YouTube better.
But do you remember to watch the YouTube better? That's the question.
But they're gonna give you a sandwich.
And then we also wanted to
Give me that
propose.
bottle of water,
No.
though.
We did also want to propose some changes to the director's report, just to clarify kind of what information is new. Because when you're looking at a block of text, it can be hard to distinguish between what has happened in the past month versus what's been ongoing. So we can do it whichever way y'all would like, but we can highlight new information that's been added since the previous report, or we can gray out old information and then have the new information in that solid black. It's totally up to y'all.
Do we have to decide now?
Now. No. But yeah, any questions, comments, concerns?
Good. Is that it?
Yeah, that's
But
it.
wait, there's
yeah.
more.
Oh, we have the director's report. That's 20 slides.
She just went over
isn't it?
that.
35.
She just went over that.
No, we went over that. Yeah, we'll, so that's all we have, and nothing else.
I want to thank the staff. I think this is a pretty good, pretty comprehensive
Yeah, we
overall
just-
overlook of all the stuff that goes
Yeah,
on.
we thought it was a good opportunity since we didn't have cases, and it's good for us too.
Right.
It reminds us what we do. And it's a lot, as you can see. So, yeah, we will, we'll bring you the information next month with the survey results, and be thinking about the vision statement. Seriously, we'll try to come with some of our own suggestions, but read through that. Read the comprehensive plan. It's not this thick anymore. It's this thick, so it's readable. Marlena will try to get those objectives in a way that we can show where they've been, some of the things that we've done have been accomplished, because I think it is important to have some measurables in there, as well. Yeah, very important, in fact. Kent, does Mount Pleasant Waterworks serve sewer outside the urban growth boundary?
Yes, they
in
do.
the East Cooper?
Yes, they do.
The only place up there that I think they put it on two, actually, Paradise Island and.
That's right. Paradise.
Birds of Prey,
Yeah, yeah.
the only two.
Okay. I was just curious. All right.
Well, all right, next month, we're going to be, the meeting is going to be on the 13th of February. We're going to be recognizing Suzanne Chavis, who's going off the commission. She served from 2011 until now. And the election of officers will also be held at the meeting on the 13th. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Woo.
Joel's 13-page